Hello, this is Andrea. It is October 16th, and I keep trying to get back into the podcasting. The reality is that one of the great pleasures of working at American Thinker is that when there's interesting news out there, people from all over America and even all over the world contribute essays, and they bring a breadth and depth of knowledge and a variety of interesting perspectives that just makes our site unique and wonderful. There is a reason that Rush Limbaugh back in the day called American Thinker his show prep. However, the downside is that since we have a daily cap on posts, sometimes I don't get the chance to write about essays that I'd like to write about because the site is already full. That's a very small downside in the grand scheme of things. Also, sometimes I'm really interested in a lot of things and I get total analysis paralysis because if I only have one or two posts to write in a day, or like today, there's no room for me at all, I can't pick what to write. And if I were to cram it all into one post, it would be a 5,000 word post, and we try to keep the length somewhat limited. So I am doodling around again with doing podcasts because then I can try to pack a lot into something that I hope some people will enjoy listening to. And anyway, since I'm a hyperverbal person, I just like to talk. So that's my intro, and I will take you through the labyrinth of my mind, which may horrify or entertain you, and give you some of the things that I've been thinking about today. What I wanted to start with are some points that come out of the settlement, the peace plan in Gaza. Now, as those of you who read my writing know, I recognize that the plan is imperfect. Israel got 20 living hostages, thank God, and may get 28 bodies, although Hamas is already dragging its feet on this. My suspicion is that the bodies show either severe torture before death or body mutilation after death because the Hamasniks are pagans. And then there's the whole thing about, can you trust the world to management, and can you manage a new Gaza, and can you trust Tony Blair to manage a new Gaza? But the reality is that Israel needed its hostages back. And I think people who don't understand Israeli politics don't really understand the emotional connection that the Israelis have with those who were seized. It is there but for the grace of God go I mindset, or goes my family, or goes whatever, that is inconceivable to us. And so Hamas, by seizing hostages, instantly gained the high ground in everything. So that was going to be a factor in any settlement, and Hamas was going to use it for all it was worth, which is why it got around 250 sadistic killers back. The other 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever are irrelevant. They're mostly POWs, and they would have had to have been released anyway, and Israel doesn't want to maintain them forever. As for the killers, until Israel has a death penalty and convicts, a due process trial, and convicts these people and executes them immediately, this is always going to be the back and forth. This is how Yahya Sinwar ended up leaving Israel's prisons, where they treated his brain tumor and all sorts of stuff, and masterminded October 7th. And then finally, there's the point that Israel simply cannot live with the world's opprobrium, and Israel wanted the war over. The military casualties, given Israel's very small size, it's less than 10 million people, means that it has in 2 years experienced the equivalent of something like 40,000 deaths in action with its military, which is a tremendous burden on such a small, close-knit nation. Having said all that, so the peace deal is imperfect, but it was not going to be better. And I think people who are criticizing Donald Trump need to understand that. But there's something more going on. There is an essay going around the internet by a guy named Mitch Schneider. And I'd love to give Mitch Schneider more information about him. There's several Mitch Snyders, and I can't figure out which one wrote this. But a gal named Gina reposted it, and it comes from October 10th. And I think it's worth reading in its entirety. If you are looking at a screen, you can follow along, and otherwise you can just listen to my mellifluous voice. So he writes, I keep hearing that Israel lost the PR war. And you know what? Fine, sure, whatever. The world thinks we're monsters. The UN passed over 30 resolutions condemning us. College campuses exploded with protests. Genocide trended on Twitter for 700 days straight. We lost the PR war. Congratulations to everyone who won it. Now let me tell you what we won instead. 2 years ago, my country was surrounded. Hezbollah had 150,000 rockets aimed at us from the north. Hamas controlled Gaza with an army in tunnels beneath it. Iran was months from a nuclear weapon. The Houthis were firing missiles at our ships. Assad Syria was an Iranian highway. Iraqi militias were itching for war. We called it the Ring of Fire. Iran spent 40 years building it. Billions of dollars, endless weapons, thousands of fighters, all of it designed for one purpose, to destroy Israel in a coordinated attack. October 7th was supposed to be the beginning. Hamas attacked from the south, Hezbollah from the north, militias from the east, Houthis from the sea. The final war. You know what happened instead? Israel dismantled the entire thing, piece by piece, threat by threat, not in some distant future, not eventually, in 2 years. Nasrallah spent 32 years building Hezbollah into the most powerful non-state military in the world. Israel killed him in his bunker and took out his entire command structure in weeks. Hezbollah isn't weakened, it's finished. Iran built a nuclear program for decades. Israel set it back years, killed their top scientists, destroyed their facilities, made the regime so weak that its own people are revolting. Assad survived a civil war, Russian intervention, and American strikes. He couldn't survive losing his Iranian backers. His regime collapsed, the land bridge is gone. The Houthis thought they could close the Red Sea. Israel crippled their long-range capabilities and neutralized the threat. Hamas? Sinwar died in rubble, clutching a stick. Hania was eliminated in Tehran. Deif is gone, the tunnels are destroyed, and this week Hamas agreed to a ceasefire and the release of all hostages. Read that again. The terrorist organization that started this war by massacring 1,200 people just agreed to release every hostage and accept a ceasefire on Israel's terms. So yeah, we lost the PR war. I'll take that loss, because here's what we gained. My kids don't have to run to bomb shelters anymore. The north is being rebuilt. Hezbollah's rockets are gone. Iran's nuclear threat has been pushed back years. The tunnels under Gaza are rubble. The Ring of Fire is extinguished. And now the hostages are coming home. There's a ceasefire. The fighting can finally end. 2 years ago, we were facing an existential threat. Today, we're the dominant power in the Middle East. Here's the thing about the PR war. It's a luxury. It's what people with security worry about. It's optics. It's perception. It's whether someone with a blue check mark likes you. Israel doesn't have that luxury. We never did. When people scream genocide, we're preventing one. When they cry disproportionate, we're stopping rockets. When they demand ceasefire, we're rescuing hostages. While the world was busy judging us, we were busy surviving. And not just surviving, winning. Fundamentally, decisively, historically winning. Iran's 40-year plan to surround and destroy Israel, over. The axis of resistance, shattered. The greatest coordinated threat in our history, defeated. So let me ask you something. Would you rather win the PR war and lose your country? Or lose the PR war and secure your existence for the next 50 years? Because that's the actual choice, and Israel made it. Again, the world can have its hashtags. We'll take our sovereignty. They can have their protests. We'll take our security. That, my friends, is a truly excellent summation of the view from within Israel. And meanwhile, Trump has Israel's back. Hamas has been dragging its feet on returning the bodies. Again, as I said, either because they show such signs of terrible torture, it's untenable, or because they mutilated the bodies after they died. Keep in mind that one of the things Muslims do is body mutilation. Anyway, what Donald Trump tweeted or truthed 2 hours before I started this recording is, if Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I love that. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And the one thing I can guarantee you is that Trump, when he says we will have no choice but to go in and kill them, that doesn't mean that he is going to put American boots on the ground. As Iran knows, Trump knows how to rain terror from the sky without any boots on the ground. So I don't think that Americans need to worry about this, and I think Hamas needs to worry a great deal. Meanwhile, in Gaza, I think they're doing away with any obligation on Israel or the U.S. to punish Hamas for refusing to release the bodies of the hostages killed or who died naturally while in captivity. There's a civil war going on in Gaza. And what I keep saying is that this is one of those civil wars where I wish for each side maximum success in destroying its enemy. This is one of those civil wars. Some civil wars you wish both sides could lose. In this case, I wish both sides win with stunning success when it comes to inflicting casualties on the other. And that would take care of events in Gaza. Yes, I know I sound bloodthirsty, but these are not civilized people. These are Stone Age people carrying modern weapons and using iPhones, but the mentality is pure 25,000 years ago. So going back to the point about PR, I just wanted to say something about the execrable Kamala Harris. And the headline at the Free Beacon is, "On eve of hostage release, Kamala Harris accuses Israel of genocide." Let me give you an insight into what she had to say.
A lot of folks in your party have called what's happening in Gaza a genocide. Do you agree with that?
I think that, listen, it is a term of law that a court will decide, but I will tell you that when you look at the number of children that have been killed, the number of innocent civilians that have been killed, the refusal to give aid and support, we should all step back and ask this question and be honest about it. Yeah.
Kamala Harris spoke those words on the eve of the peace deal, on the eve of the hostages being released. And what's so amazing about that is that it is based entirely on the PR. For example, the refusal to give aid and support. For the entirety of the war, Israel kept water and power flowing to Gaza and shipped in tons and tons of food, so much so that I believe that they still have months of Israeli supplies in Gaza. While the hostages were being starved to death, their captors were getting fat, and Hamas itself was using the food. It would steal it from the aid trucks and then sell it back to the citizens at inflated prices, using the money to continue to buy weapons from rogue nations. So Kamala Harris is completely fact-free. And then when you get to the number of children and the number of innocent civilians that have been killed, one of the most amazing statistics out of this war is that the total death count is estimated to have been 67,000, which is quite amazing when you consider that Gaza was a densely populated urban center that was a site of a hot war for 2 years. And more than that, a hot war where Hamas used citizens as shields, where it had tunnels under citizen locations and used hospitals, schools, and apartment buildings as the areas for storing their weapons and conducting their fighting. Israel did everything it could to minimize civilian casualty. It gave away military advantage by notifying civilians in advance when it was going to attack an area or bomb a building, which also allowed Hamas to escape the area or to keep the civilians there. And also the numbers came out of Gaza. Who can trust Hamas's numbers? But in any event, what it turns out is Trump has said that of the 67,000 people killed, 58,000 were Hamas fighters. And what mathematicians have said is that means that Israel's ratio of militant to civilian casualties is roughly 6.4 to 1, which is unprecedented in modern urban warfare. It's staggering how few civilians were killed. So Kamala is just lying. She's lying through her teeth. She is a shocking and disgraceful woman. So while I'm on the subject of Kamala, there is this gem from Kamala boasting about her qualifications to a hard left show host on some podcast, and I forget the gal's name. It's a super, super, super lefty out of San Francisco, and even she can't accept what Kamala has to say. So hold on to your hats for this one.
And the fact that I was elected district attorney for 2 terms as the first woman elected attorney general of the state of California, ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. I was the United States Senator, second black woman elected in the history of the United States Senate, and I was the first woman vice president of the United States. So there are those things that I needed to make sure that people knew.
That is a decent resume, but go ahead.
Well, some people have actually said I was the most qualified candidate ever to run for president.
I like the some people say. Very nice, but go ahead.
I'm just speaking fact.
Yeah.
That's pretty staggering. Kamala Harris talks about the fact that she spent her entire career in government, so she's never actually accomplished something in the real world, done anything beneficial in the real world. She is just a party apparatchik. And then she boasts, some people have actually said I was the most qualified candidate ever to run for president. It must be lovely to live in Kamala's head because reality just simply has no place there. The woman is famously behind the scenes known to be dumb as a rock. She takes marching orders from everyone. There are, of course, all the rumors about her alcoholism. She has gone from one failure to another. She's always been, it was the Peter principle, where she's always constantly promoted from her ineptitude. But in her own universe, she is the most qualified candidate ever to run for president. So that was Kamala, but I want to circle back to Islam because Islam is, we face 3 threats in the world today. We in America and we generally in the West. 1 is China, 2 is leftism, and 3 is Islam. And currently Islam is the most aggressive. It is the one with the scimitars and the bombs. China is building up its military, and thankfully Trump is aware of that, and it has used trade and the Belt and Road initiatives to try to squeeze people economically. And leftists, well, Trump has them a bit on the ropes, but they and Islam are partnering. So what I wanted to point out was an essay by Daniel Greenfield at Front Page. If you are not familiar with him, you are missing out on something because he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And he has a report in the October 16th Front Page, Hook-Handed Terror Imam Fights Toilet Jihad in Prison. And it is quite an amazing essay because it is about the way in which our own values are weapons in the hands of jihadists. So the hook-handed Muslim is Imam Abu Hamza, who was an Egyptian Muslim cleric who headed a UK terrorist mosque back in the early 2000s. Many of you probably remember him. He had the hooked hand and the eye patch, and he was a pretty awful person. And he was also involved in crimes, and so he's ended up in prison. And he was sentenced to several life sentences because of providing support to Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. And he's just a horrible, barbaric man. So now he's back to his legal name as Mustafa Kamel Mustafa, which, the repetition in Muslim names is always amusing, if nothing else. And he, like every Muslim in an American prison, is making endless demands for special treatment to accommodate his religion. And we in America, even if you're a prisoner, you have to have certain religious accommodations. So he demanded a hairbrush, an electric toothbrush, and prompt toenail clipping services. But the real deal, and I'm going to read a little bit from what Daniel wrote, is the toilet. And pardon the crudity, this is just part of the whole thing. Muslims have detailed toilet protocols that Sharia requires them to follow. They must step into the bathroom with their left foot first. They may not have their backs to Mecca when they defecate. Men may not urinate while standing up. Muslims are required to wash their private parts with water after urinating or defecating. Muslim men then have a specific prescribed process for removing the remaining urine to ensure that they are clean to pray for Allah. Now, let me go back to This Is Me. The website of the Grand Ayatollah of Iraq describes what has to be done. Basically, it is using your fingers to massage your penis from anus all down to squeeze out every last drop of urine. You can't drip if you're a Muslim man. So this is not about hygiene. This is simply about one of Muhammad's prescriptions for people who pray. But you also can't do it, your left hand is your dirty hand and your right hand is your clean hand, because the right hand eats and the left hand is the one for doing all this cleansing after defecating and urinating. So it's all very complicated. And what do you do when you have a hook in place of a hand? Well, if you are Abu Hamza or Mustafa Kamal Mustafa or whatever, you demand an attendant to squeeze out your penis 5 times a day so you can be cleaned for prayer. No fooling. This is what the lawsuits have been. He's suing and suing over again. And I'm quoting Daniel Greenfield, the prison already went to the trouble of outfitting his 2 cells with showers with multiple shower heads, including a lower shower head, and allowing him to run the water as long as he likes. But that wasn't good enough. And I'm stopping quoting there. But the question is whether defendants have substantially burdened the exercise of Mr. Mustafa's religion by limiting him to use a bidet to clean himself. So he has a bidet, he has showers, he has toilets, but he needs an attendant to squeeze his penis. And as this is not about religion. I mean, he's a religious fanatic, but this is obviously about forcing our entire American system to bow down to Islam. This is about dhimmitude. So understand this, and you understand a lot about Islam. The other thing to understand about Islam is that it kills people. And there's an article in PJ Media today by Catherine Salgado, Christians murdered and jailed in Iran, Nigeria, and Congo. And I'll just read the first few paragraphs. It's nothing you don't already know. Muslim persecution of Christians is intensifying in several countries, including Iran, Nigeria, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Nigeria remains the deadliest country in the world for Christians, with a decade-plus-long genocide that has claimed tens of thousands of lives. Islamic Fulani militants made Christian villages in Barkhan Ladi local government area of Plateau State their latest target in a deadly raid on October 14, according to International Christian Concern. So while the world's media has been keeping your attention on Israel, which fought the cleanest, safest war in the history of urban warfare, Muslims have been slaughtering Christians with utter abandon. And the thing to remember is if you look at a map at Islam's explosion out of what's now Saudi Arabia, it did so by just killing everything in its path. And that's what it's doing again. Islam isn't about religious pluralism. Right now, the left is allied with Islam because they are both enemies of the Bible. You know, first they come for the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. Christians and Jews are in the Muslim and leftist crosshairs. But leftists have a tiger by the tail because I'll tell them this. They're not going to believe me. They don't care. But once they've gotten rid of the Saturday and the Sunday people, the Muslims will turn on them. If you want a global caliphate, this is how you get a global caliphate. A county judge in Chicago area bars ICE from arresting people at court. No fooling. This is a report from AP. Chicago County top judge has signed an order barring ICE from arresting people at courthouses. Detaining residents outside court has been a common tactic for federal agents. And I'm going to just stop there and add, this is what Willie Sutton said about robbing banks. You go there because that's where the money is. Why is ICE going to courthouses? Because that's where criminals who happen to be illegal aliens are to be signed. And the order bars the civil arrest of any party witness or potential witness. This is just all part of a package in places like Portland and Los Angeles, and I will get to Los Angeles in 1 second, and obviously Chicago. This is pure insurrection to the point of actual rebellion, because there are areas where it's questionable. The 10th Amendment kicks in, states' rights versus federal power, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to matters of immigration, that is purely 100% a federal matter. And federal law is extremely clear that illegal aliens have very limited rights. And one of the things the federal government is charged with doing is detaining them wherever it may find them and repatriating them to their home countries. To those who liken this to rounding up Jews, no, because Jews were people who lived legally in the countries, and they were taken from their homes, and they were either slaughtered in the streets or sent to concentration camps as slave labor, or sent to concentration camps to be executed in gas chambers. That is not the same as picking up people who have illegally entered the country and who need to be returned to their places of origin, the ones that they voluntarily left to break the law to come to America. Anyway, it's all one of the same. Here is a report out of LA County.
The county has declared a state of emergency over the immigration raids. The Board of Supervisors voted today. Board members say the raids are preventing people from going to work and forcing some businesses to close. The emergency allows the board to look at enacting an eviction moratorium and other protections for people impacted by the raids. And this news just coming into our newsroom will, of course, continue to follow.
It's not just what the headlines say that they're giving rent relief to these illegal aliens. One of the things that is also being reported is that they're doing an eviction moratorium. In other words, they're actually taking money from landlords who are trying to evict people who shouldn't be there in the first place. Again, this is a violation of Americans' civil rights in favor of the left's true love, which is illegal aliens who they see as the new demographic, people who come from impoverished, socialized countries and who are used to strong-arm government, poverty, and being dependent on a government without liberty. Okay, two more things I want to cover here. The first thing is a Jack Smith interview with Andrew Weissman. It's like two malevolent people on one stage. Jack Smith, as you may recall, is the one behind the Mar-a-Lago raid. And what's so interesting is what he has to say about the Mar-a-Lago raid. I'll play it for you, and if you've been following me, you know where he got it wrong. What he's about to do is explain why Joe Biden got a pass, but Donald Trump didn't. And he's just finished saying that, well, Robert Hur made a different decision, and it's because the facts were different. And listen to how he explains the different facts.
Both cases involve classified documents, and one was in Mar-a-Lago, which was a social club, and also his home, and the other one was largely in Biden's home, also I think an office that he worked at. The difference is the facts. The rule of law allows for different outcomes when the facts are different. One of the major differences between the two cases is the obstructive conduct in the case that I investigated. And that's important for a couple of different reasons. One reason is to prove illegal possession of classified documents. You need to show that you possess the documents, or the defendant possessed the documents willfully. And that means he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he knew he was possessing the documents. In my particular case, we had tons of evidence of willfulness. And the obstructive evidence, publicly saying these are my documents or things like that, and I can keep them. The evidence to not give the documents back when the government even tried to get them back before there was a criminal investigation. Those sort of things. And then after the investigation started, still refusing to give them back, and then trying to obstruct the investigation. That helps prove willfulness. That sort of evidence didn't exist in the other case. And there are, I could probably keep you all here for a long time talking about the differences in terms of, the numbers are not, I want to make sure I get this pretty close to right, but almost 4 times as many documents that the person I was investigating compared to the other case. The sensitivity of the documents. I think Special Counsel Hur said that the documents that he most likely could bring a prosecution on were over 15 years old and dealt exclusively with the conflict that had ended in Afghanistan. As we alleged in our indictment, the documents I was dealing with were much more sensitive and much more recent, and we laid out the sort of subject areas, those sensitive subject areas, in the indictment. So there were a number of differences between the case, and that is what the rule of law wants, is to have situations where different factual outcomes, different levels of proof can result in different outcomes. And that's what I think happened.
So where to begin with everything that was wrong? Well, the biggest thing, of course, is, and you'll notice how he ignores this entirely. Trump took those documents into his possession when he was still president. Biden took those documents into his possession when he was, I think, still a senator and a vice president. That status overrides everything. According to the Supreme Court, and I think the case is named Egan, it's a 1980s case, maybe 1983, the president has absolute plenary power over national security. That is an authority that comes to him from the Constitution. What that means is that the bureaucracy cannot make rules to control him. He can make rules to control the bureaucracy. And it also means that if President Trump says that documents are declassified or behaves in such a way that indicates that he intends them to be declassified, as, for example, taking them out of the White House, then they're declassified. He did not have classified documents in his possession. The fact that some bureaucrat stamped the word classified on a document becomes irrelevant when the president's decision overrides that. In the case of Joe Biden, he wasn't president. When he took those documents, he was violating national security laws. And intentionality does not matter. What matters is whether you behaved recklessly or carelessly or negligently. Intentionality is just one more level of badness. And the fact that a a senator and vice president took national security documents and stored them in his garage speaks of a level of negligence and recklessness and, frankly, intentionality that is unmitigated and inexcusable. Finally, the sheer volume of documents is irrelevant because Trump could take anything he wanted, and Biden couldn't take anything at all. That's all that counts. As for the statute of limit, the fact that one war has ended and another is not, doesn't matter. We still have classified documents going back to the 1960s. So everything he says is a lie. Everything. And I'll tell you, if that's his best defense, should he finally end up in court, things should not go well for him, assuming an honest judge. I'm going to end on a good note, which is a study by Professor Eric Kaufman at the University of Buckingham, and it's about the decline of trans and queer identity among young Americans. And I'm just going to read to you his executive summary. After surging in the 2010s and 20s, trans and queer identities are in decline among young Americans. The transgender share among university students peaked in 2023 and has almost halved since then, from nearly 7% to under 4%. The share of students identifying as not heterosexual fell by about 10 points in the same period. The decline in non-heterosexual share is concentrated in the queer or other sexual categories, i.e. pansexual, asexual, and to a lesser extent, bisexuality. Today's freshmen are less BTQ, so that's bisexual, transgender, and questioning plus, than seniors, suggesting that decline will continue. The decline in BTQ plus identification does not appear to be connected to lower social media use, religious revival, a shift to the political right, or lower support for woke ideology. There is evidence that improved mental health has reduced BTQ plus identification. So, in other words, as everybody's commenting, this was a social contagion. But it's also a reminder, once again, that the biggest struggle that leftists are having now is against reality. Ultimately, reality will triumph. And reality is that boys and girls are different, and that boys like girls, and that there will always be a small percentage of boys and girls who are same-sex attracted for whatever reason. I've known some where it seemed to be out of the womb, and I've known others where it was so manifestly a product of nurture. And usually it's, in my experience, looking at the many homosexuals I've known, both male and female, is that it is a hyper-dominant mother and an absent father. That just seems to be the pattern that I have seen. So what's happening is that normalcy is returning. The tragedy, though, is all the people who truly jettison their lives. It's one thing if you go around saying, oh yeah, I identify as pansexual, but you just live as a normal heterosexual person of whatever sex you are. It's another thing when you look at the people who got caught up in this. One of my friends, her child had the full surgery and is now a complete mutant, and it's utterly appalling. He used to be this absolutely charming, gorgeous, obviously gay man, and now he is this weird, with a Marilyn Monroe voice, and he's 6'4" and has size 14 feet, and C cup boobs, and he's gelded himself. There's no going back for him. And I still remember Kurt Schlichter saying a long time ago that when this fad ends, they're going to find freezers stuffed with the bodies of the doctors and parents who encourage this. And my friend did not encourage this, although she was told, would you rather have a dead son or a living daughter? So the medical establishment hugely bullied her into accepting this craziness. And it was craziness. He got depressed and lonely during COVID, and some therapists said, well, you'll be happy again if you cut off all your bits and pieces. It's a terrible, terrible thing. On that note, I think we're done here. Thank you so much for listening while I blathered on. I really appreciate people who are willing to stick with me.